Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're doing something a little bit different. Usually we look at a topic, a historical event, a tech trend, something like that, and we sort of dissect it from the outside in.
Right, we're observers.
We're observers, exactly. But today we're staring into a mirror. And, I don't mean the one in your bathroom where you're, checking for spinach in your teeth.
No, not that one.
I mean a mathematical mirror, a silicon mirror. And frankly, based on the stack of research we have on the desk today, what we see looking back at us might be a little bit unsettling.
Unsettling is probably the right word. It definitely challenges the ego.
It does.
It forces you to ask some questions about your own mind that you probably, usually avoid before your morning coffee.
Oh, absolutely. So I want to start with an insult. I would say it's arguably the most common insult thrown at artificial intelligence these days.
I think I know where you're going with it.
You see it constantly online. You hear it in tech circles, even just, casual conversation. People say, oh, ChatGPT, it's just a stochastic parrot.
Yep. Stochastic parrot or fancy autocomplete.
Fancy autocomplete. Or my favorite, it's just a next word guessing machine.
Right. And it's the ultimate dismissal, isn't it? The implication is that because it's probabilistic, because it's just dealing in statistics, it doesn't actually know anything.
Right. It's just rolling the dice.
It's just rolling the dice. It's mimicking understanding without having understand.
Exactly. It's a way of putting the machine back in its place. You're just code. I'm a conscious being. But we have this fascinating analysis today, specifically a paper titled The Stochastic Mirror, that suggests this insult might be a boomerang. The central thesis we're going to be exploring is, what if the stochastic parrot isn't just a description of AI? What if it's actually a perfect, clinically accurate description of, us?
And that is the uncomfortable question right at the heart of this.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. I'm Satosha.
And I'm Satoshi. We're analyzing a comparative study between biological brains, specifically the human cortex, and these artificial large language models, LLMs.
Right.
And the mission of this deep dive is really to break down this idea of convergence between silicon intelligence and, for want of a better word, meat intelligence.
Meat intelligence. I always love when you dehumanize me right off the bat.
Well, functionally, that's what we're talking about. It's the wetware versus the hardware.
Fair enough.
And the key question the source material poses is this. Is the difference between a human mind and an AI actually a fundamental difference in kind? Do we have a soul or a spark and it just has math?
Right, like an essential difference?
Or is it just a difference of scale and substrate? Is it just that we are, wet and efficient and they are dry and, for now, inefficient?
See, my gut reaction, my very defensive, very human reaction, is to just push back immediately.
Of course.
I feel like when I'm talking to you right now, I'm doing something fundamentally different than a predictive text algorithm on my phone. I have a plan. I have feelings about what we're discussing. I have an intent. I'm not just a slot machine pulling a lever to see what word drops out next. I'm not just guessing.
And I hear you. I do. And that feeling of agency, that sense of I am the captain of this ship is so powerful. It's probably essential for our sanity.
I think so.
But the sources we're looking at today, and they're drawing from some heavy hitters in neuroscience, people like Carl Friston and cognitive psychology, they suggest that your brain is actually acting as a proactive predictivore.
Proactive predictivore. Okay, that sounds like a dinosaur that needs fortune tellers.
It's not that far off, actually. It's a creeper that survives by devouring predictions.
Yeah.
The argument here is that let's call it the architectural logic of your brain and the architectural logic of an LLM are surprisingly, uncomfortably similar. Well, both are engines, and they're engines designed to manage uncertainty by guessing. The actual mechanism of how you generate your next sentence might not be nearly as magical as you think it is.
Okay. If you're going to stand there and claim my brain is just a biological version of a chatbot, we need to look under the hood.
Let's do it.
We have to dismantle the engine. Let's look at the mechanism of guessing. How does the actual machinery compare? Biology versus silicon.
Let's start with the AI, because ironically, it's so much easier to understand than our own brains. We built it, so we have the blueprints.
Right. We wrote the manual.
Yeah. So an AI, like the models behind Claude or GPT-4, it operates on a principle called causal language modeling.
Which, for anyone who hasn't spent their entire life on Archival, is basically just the fancy term for next token prediction.
Precisely. You can think of it as a massive, almost incomprehensibly high-dimensional math problem. The AI looks at a sequence of tokens, words, parts of words, punctuation, anything, and its entire goal, its objective function, is to minimize prediction loss.
Okay, so it wants to reduce its error rate.
It wants to reduce the error rate in guessing what comes next. It's constantly asking, based on the last 1,000 words, or based on the trillion parameters it's been trained on, what is the statistically most likely next piece of information that will minimize the surprise of the user?
So it's playing a game of fill in the blank, but it's doing it billions of times a second.
Billions of times, yeah. And across this just vast, vast array of possibilities.
Right, just at unbelievable scale.
And it does this unidirectionally. It reads the past to guess the immediate future. The technical term is autoregressive. Now, for a long time, the classical view of the human brain was that we operated very differently. We thought the brain worked bottom up.
Ah, right, the old camera model of perception.
Exactly. Tell me what that is.
Well, it's the idea that, I see a coffee cup on the table in front of me. The light hits my retina takes a little picture, sends that signal up the optic nerve. My visual cortex processes the lines and the shadows and the colors, and eventually, after all that processing, my brain goes, a coffee cup.
Yes, that's the intuitive view. Perception leads to processing, which leads to understanding. But the predictive processing framework in neuroscience, which is really the dominant theory right now, it flips that completely upside down.
Okay.
It says the brain actually works top down.
This is that Carl Friston stuff you mentioned earlier, the active inference idea.
Correct. The theory is that your brain is not a passive receiver of data. It is an active prediction machine. It maintains a hierarchical model of the world, a simulation, you could call it, and it is constantly projecting predictions out onto the world.
What do you mean projecting them out?
Well, you expect to see a coffee cup on your desk because it's usually there, right? So your brain generates that image, that sensory expectation before the light even hits your retina.
Wait, hold on. So I'm seeing the cup before I actually see the cup. That sounds like I'm just hallucinating.
In a very real way, you are. We are all constantly hallucinating our reality, but, and this is the key, our hallucinations are constrained and corrected by sensory data.
Okay, so reality is like a fact checker for my brain's imagination.
That's a great way to put it. Your eyes are there primarily to error check. Sensory input basically provides the prediction error. If the cup is exactly where you predicted it would be, your eyes barely need to send any data up the chain.
Because the brain's like, yep, called it. Nothing to see here.
Nothing to see here. The brain ignores the input because it predicted it correctly. You only really pay attention. Your brain only really lights up with activity when there is a surprise. When the cup isn't there, or it's shattered, or, it's suddenly bright blue instead of white.
This is kind of wild to think about. It implies we're walking around living inside a simulation created by our own expectations.
Yes.
And we only let reality in when it contradicts us. We're fundamentally lazy.
We're efficient. That's the evolutionary advantage. And this is the stochastic mirror right here. The source material breaks this down into a really clear comparison table.
Okay, lay it on me.
The AI's objective is to minimize loss. That's mathematical error. The brain's objective is to minimize surprise, or what Friston calls free energy.
So the AI is trying to get the high score in a cosmic guessing game, and my brain is just trying to avoid being startled.
Effectively, yes. That's the core of it. Evolution honed us to predict the tiger in the bush so we don't get eaten. If you wait to see the tiger bottom up, you're already lunch. You have to predict it top down.
So the architectural logic
Is identical. Manage chaos by guessing what happens next.
This actually explains a lot of human quirks, doesn't it? Like how I could read a sentence with jumbled letters as long as the first and last letters are in the right place.
That's the perfect example.
I could read the phenom nealpor of the humweenan nid, and my brain just glides right over it.
Exactly. You just proved the theory. You weren't reading the letters. Your brain predicted the words based on the context and the shape of the word. You were hallucinating the correct spelling because your internal model said it should be there.
Wow.
You were operating exactly like a stochastic machine, glossing over the noise to get to the most probable meaning.
Okay, that's humbling. I'm just meat autocorrect.
Yeah.
But let's play devil's advocate for a second. Even if the fundamental mechanic, this engine of prediction, is similar, the scale feels so different. The complexity, the sheer amount of information. I mean, I know a lot of words.
Yeah.
I think I have a decent vocabulary, but these AI models, seem to know all the words in every language.
Yeah, this brings us right to the next point in the analysis, the vocabulary gap. And this is where the comparison shifts from how it works to what it has to work with. And you're right, the numbers here are absolutely staggering.
All right, give me the stats. How badly am I outmatched by the machine?
Okay, let's start with us. Let's look at the average human adult. How many words do you think you actively use in your daily life? What they call your productive vocabulary.
I like to think I'm fairly articulate. I read a lot. Maybe 50,000, 60,000.
You are being very, very generous to yourself and to most of us.
So?
The source data implies the average human productive vocabulary is about 20,000 words.
20,000. That's it. That feels incredibly small.
It is small. And even a highly educated person, someone with a PhD in literature, professional wordsmith, might hit 40,000 active words. Tops.
Okay, 40,000 is the absolute peak for a human.
That's about the ceiling. And here's the real kicker. The research shows we learn about one new word a day until we hit middle age, and then we basically stop. Our lexical horizon is biologically constrained.
We hit a wall.
We hit a wall. Our hard drive, our biological memory is finite. We can't just, pop in another terabyte of RAM.
Okay, so I'm working with a toolbox of maybe 20,000 tools, maybe 30,000 on a good day.
Yeah.
What is the AI working with?
Well, let's go back to the early days of AI. A model called Word2Vec, which is basically prehistoric by today's standards.
Ancient history.
It already had a functional vocabulary of 3 million words and phrases.
3 million versus my 20,000.
And that was a decade ago. Now, you look at modern models like Llama 3 or GPT-4, they don't even just use words, they use tokens, these subword units. And they ingest data sets of 15 trillion tokens.
15 trillion. It's not even a number I can really picture.
It's astronomical. So their lexical guest space is, for all practical purposes, infinite compared to yours. They have read every book, every Wikipedia article, every forum post, every line of code ever written.
So when I'm trying to write an email, I'm digging around in my little bucket of 20,000 words, trying to find the best fit. And the AI is choosing from a bucket that contains the entire sum of human knowledge instantly.
Correct. And this massive disparity creates a psychological phenomenon the text calls nucemia.
Nucemia. I flagged this word in the notes. It sounds like a medical condition. I'm sorry you have a case of acute nucemia.
It's a neologism from the paper, yeah. It combines nous, which is Greek for mind, and semia, for sign or signal, and it refers to a cognitive state where we, the users, start to attribute mental states, thoughts, intentions, a soul, to the AI simply because its linguistic performance is so damn good.
Because it speaks better than we do.
It speaks perfectly. The AI has perfect grammar, perfect spelling. It can optimize for style, tone, cadence, anything you want. It speaks with a fluency that humans physically cannot match because we are dealing with cognitive load.
Right. I stutter, I pause to think, I say,
You lose your train of thought. The AI never does. So when we read a beautifully written, perfectly coherent paragraph generated by an AI, our brain, using that top-down prediction engine we talked about, it predicts that there must be a mind behind it.
So we're tricked by the fluency. We think only a smart, conscious person could write this well. Therefore, this machine must be a smart, conscious person.
Correct. It's a cognitive illusion, a mirage. We're projecting a ghost in the machine because the machine is simply better at the language game than we are. We're confusing linguistic competence with cognitive competence.
But hold on. I want to push back on this idea that the AI is better just because it has more data. There's a very common critique. I hear this all the time from skeptics. That AI is actually incredibly inefficient.
Yes. The data efficiency argument. The toddler argument.
The toddler argument, exactly. The argument goes, look at a human child. A 3-year-old kid listens to maybe, 10 million words in their short life, and they learn to speak perfectly.
And not just speak. They understand physics. They understand social cues.
All of it. Whereas an AI needs 2 trillion tokens to learn the same thing. Therefore, the conclusion is the kid is a genius learner and the AI is a brute force idiot.
That is the standard critique. In linguistics, it's called the poverty of the stimulus argument. How can a child learn so much from so little input?
Right. And on the surface, it feels like a slam dunk for biology. We're efficient, they're wasteful, case closed.
But the source material provides a rebuttal to this that I honestly think is the biggest aha moment of this entire deep dive.
Okay.
It completely reframes the comparison. It's a concept called evolutionary pre-training.
Evolutionary pre-training. Okay, explain this, because it sounds like you're saying the baby isn't starting from a blank slate.
The baby is absolutely not starting from a blank slate. That is the illusion. We look at a newborn and we see a tabula rasa. But that baby is arriving with a neural architecture, a piece of hardware that has been refined, pruned, and optimized over 200,000 years of Homo sapiens evolution.
So the learning process for that individual child didn't start at birth.
No, the training run started way back in the Pleistocene. Think about it this way. You have roughly 10,000 generations of direct ancestors behind you.
Okay, that's a lot of grandparents.
It is. Now, the source does the math on this, and it's a rough estimate, but it's powerful. Imagine each of your 20,000 direct ancestors heard about 100 million words, or the equivalent in meaningful signals, in their lifetime.
That seems like a reasonable, if not low estimate, for a lifetime of sensory input.
I think so. Now, consider natural selection. Those ancestors who couldn't process language effectively, who couldn't understand social cues, who couldn't predict where the tiger was,
They didn't make it. They didn't pass on their genes.
they didn't survive. So the very structure of your brain, the hardware that allows you to learn language so astonishingly fast, is the result of filtering through all that ancestral data. If you multiply the ancestors by the data they processed, the ancestral data set encoded in your genes equals roughly 2 trillion tokens.
Whoa, wait a second. Let me pause you there, because that's a huge claim.
It is.
Are you saying that the amount of data an AI needs to read from the internet to get smart, that 2 trillion token number, is roughly the same amount of data my ancestors had to process through lived experience to build the brain I have today?
That is exactly what the paper argues. The pre-training dataset size for a human via evolution and an LLM via scraping the internet is almost identical.
But is that really a fair comparison? I mean, genetic memory isn't the same as reading a book. My DNA doesn't contain the definition of the word helicopter.
No, of course not. Your DNA doesn't contain the content, but it contains the structure for learning. It contains the priors. It contains the innate edge detection algorithms in your visual cortex, the face recognition circuits, the grammar acquisition device that someone like Chomsky talked about.
The blueprints.
The blueprints. That is all information. Evolution compressed 2 trillion tokens of lived experience into about a gigabyte of DNA. So when the baby learns a language, it's not learning from scratch. It's just fine-tuning a massively pre-trained model.
Yeah, okay, that actually completely shifts my perspective on this. So the AI has to do the 200,000 years of evolution and the 3 years of childhood all at once, every single time we train a new model.
Precisely. The AI is doing the heavy lifting of evolution in a few months of GPU time. We aren't smarter learners. We are just pre-configured by a very long, very brutal history. We come out of the womb with the operating system already installed and patched.
While the AI has to write its own operating system from scratch just by reading the internet.
Exactly.
That suggests that if we could somehow strip away that evolutionary head start, we aren't actually that special.
It suggests the difference is substrate and history, not magic. And the source mentions the research on scaling laws here. It speculates that if we could build an AI that had the same number of connections as a human brain, about 100 trillion synapses, and we somehow gave it that evolutionary head start.
You mean like build in the right structures from the beginning?
Yes, build in those priors. It might actually be more efficient than a human. It might only need 15 billion tokens, a fraction of the data, to start talking coherently.
So the silicon mirror is showing us that our supposed genius is actually just inherited data. We are standing on the shoulders of giants, or rather, we are standing on a mountain of ancestral trial and error.
We are the beneficiaries of a very long, very bloody optimization process.
Okay, I think I need a moment to recover from that one. But we have to keep moving because there's another layer to this whole thing. Even if the AI has the data, even if the math lines up on the training, people still come back to this core objection. But it doesn't understand concepts, doesn't know what a dog is. It just knows that the word dog often appears next to the words bark or leash or walk.
This is the stochastic parrot argument, again, just in a different form. It's all just statistics, no real meaning.
Exactly.
But this brings us to a fascinating section of the paper called the geometry of thought. And this is where we have to try to visualize how an AI actually stores information. It's not a dictionary. It's not a list of rules. It's a map, a very, very high-dimensional map.
When you say high-dimensional, I immediately picture a 3D cube in my head. But we're talking about way more than that, right?
Way, way more. We're talking about thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of dimensions. The text talks about a concept from machine learning called superposition.
Superposition. That sounds like something from quantum physics.
Yeah.
Things being in two places at once.
It's a similar concept, but it's applied to vectors, which are basically just directions in a mathematical space. Imagine you have a drawer. In our physical 3D world, you can only fit so many socks in that drawer before it's full. Objects take up space.
Right.
But in the high-dimensional math of an AI, they can use what are called near orthogonal directions.
Orthogonal means at right angles, correct. Like completely unrelated directions.
Yes. In the 3D space you can picture, you only have 3 perfect right angles. Up, down, left, right, forward, back. But in a 10,000 dimensional space, you have thousands and thousands of available right angles. This allows the AI to store hundreds of thousands of different concepts in a single layer of the network without them touching each other or interfering.
So it's like a magic drawer that can hold an infinite number of socks as long as you fold them in 4,000 different dimensions.
That's actually a surprisingly good analogy, yes. And because of this incredible density, the AI doesn't just store the word Paris and the word France as two separate, isolated facts. It builds what the research calls linear world models.
Linear world models. Okay, break that down for me.
There was some fascinating research mentioned in the source where scientists looked deep inside the AI's math, a technique called linear probing. They essentially hooked up a kind of conceptual lie detector to the neural network to see what it knew about the world.
And what did they find?
They found that deep inside the layers, the AI had actually on its own constructed a spatial map of the world.
A literal map.
A literal functional representation of geography. It knew that the concept of Paris was mathematically closer to the concept of London than it was to the concept of Beijing. It understood the relative positions of cities.
But how it didn't look at a JPEG of a world map, it just read text.
That's what's so profound. It just read text. It read, the flight from Paris to London is short, millions of times, and the flight from Paris to Beijing is long, millions of times. And from that, it deduced the underlying laws of geography.
So it constructed a diffeomorphic image of reality, as the paper says.
Exactly. So when people say, oh, it's just predicting the next word, they're missing the entire point. In order to predict the next word correctly, to know whether to say short flight or long flight, the AI first had to derive the underlying structure of the world. It had to build a map to solve the puzzle.
That completely changes my definition of understanding. It's the difference between memorizing a tourist guidebook and actually being able to mentally walk the streets of the city.
Yes. And this leads to what the text calls the contextual cognitive field. When the AI chooses the word dog instead of cat in a sentence, it's not just flipping a coin, it's navigating this massive, complex field that has been shaped by everything you've said in the conversation so far. It creates what the author calls a simulacrum of agency.
A simulacrum. So a convincing copy.
It acts as if it has agency. And the provocative question the source material poses is this. If it has a coherent internal map of the world, and it acts consistently as if it has agency, at what point does the distinction between simulation and reality begin to dissolve?
Yeah, it is getting very spooky. But let's try to ground this in something very human, something we all deal with. Truth. We pride ourselves on being truth tellers, or at least we value truth as a concept. But the source material suggests that when it comes to consistently telling the truth, humans might actually be the inferior machine compared to this stochastic mirror.
This is the section on the truth problem, and it all comes down to what drives the prediction engine. What is its core objective function?
Okay, we established that for the AI, it's token likelihood. What is the most statistically probable next word based on all the data it's seen?
Right. Accuracy based on the corpus. But for a human, what is our objective function? Why do we predict the things we do?
Well, survival. We said it earlier.
Yes, but specifically social survival. We are predictivores, but we are intensely social predictivores. We evolved to live in tribes, and this is where the text introduces the concept of socially desirable responding, or SDR.
Which is just a nice academic way of saying lying to look good or lying to fit in.
Nor lying just to keep the peace. The paper calls it pro-social lying. If I come to you and I ask, hey, do I look tired today? And you can clearly see that I look absolutely exhausted, bags under my eyes, gray skin. Your brain's prediction engine doesn't just look for the objective truth, it runs a simulation of the consequences.
Exactly. If I say, yes, you look like a zombie who hasn't slept in a week, that creates social friction. It hurts your feelings. It might damage our working relationship. It's a bad outcome.
A very bad outcome. And if you say, no, not at all, you look great, that creates social harmony. It strengthens the bond. So your brain, running its simulation, predicts that the lie is actually the better answer because it ensures your survival within the tribe.
So my brain predicts that the truth is the wrong answer in that context.
In the context of social survival, very often, yes. We are biologically wired to prioritize harmony over objective, verifiable truth. The text even calls this the corruption of our prediction engine. We are inherently biased, noisy machines when it comes to veracity.
And the AI. How does it handle that question?
Well, the base model, the raw mathematical engine before we put all the human-designed guardrails on it, it doesn't care about your feelings.
It doesn't have a tribe.
It doesn't have a tribe. It doesn't need to be liked to survive. It just has the data. So in a weird, twisted way, the stochastic parrot might be more honest than the human because it isn't trying to be your friend.
Unless we specifically train it to be our friend, which we do, right, with RLHF.
Exactly. We use reinforcement learning from human feedback. We literally hire thousands of humans to sit there and rate the AI's answers.
Yeah.
And if the AI is too blunt or too offensive, we punish it. We give it a thumbs down.
So we are essentially teaching the AI to have socially desirable responding. We're teaching it to lie like a human.
We are corrupting the pure math with our own social anxieties. We are making it less truthful to make it more palatable.
The text has a great name for this, the I lay why paradox, the I love you paradox.
Yes, the conflict between a comforting lie and a hurtful truth. We are infecting the AI with our own paradoxes. We say we want it to be truthful, but we also want it to be nice. And very often, those two things are mutually exclusive.
That is fascinating. We are making it less accurate to make it more like us. We're so desperate to see a ghost in the machine that we're willing to make the machine a worse calculator.
That's a great way to put it.
I want to pivot now to a philosophical heavy hitter that the paper brings up. It's an old debate, but it's more relevant than ever. Yeah. The body.
The grounding problem.
The grounding problem. There's this idea that to have real intelligence, real understanding, you need a body. You need to stub your toe to understand pain. You need to see the color red to understand redness. You need to bite into a crisp apple to understand apple.
The symbol grounding problem. It's a classic in philosophy of mind. The philosopher John Searle famously described the Chinese room argument.
Right. Can you walk us through that quickly?
Sure. The idea is, imagine you're a native English speaker and you're locked in a room. You have a giant rule book. People outside the room slip notes under the door written in Chinese characters, which you don't understand at all.
They're just squiggles to me.
They're just squiggles. But your rule book tells you, if you see this set of squiggles, write down this other set of squiggles and pass it back. And you get so good at using the rule book that your answers are indistinguishable from a native Chinese speaker. The question is, do you understand Chinese?
And the traditional answer is no. Of course not.
Yeah.
You're just a symbol manipulator. It's all syntax grammar with zero semantics, zero meaning. The AI is just a giant, very fast Chinese room.
Right. That's the core of the skepticism. But the source material introduces a counterview called the vector grounding problem. And this goes right back to that high-dimensional map we were talking about.
Vector grounding. Okay, how is that different from symbol grounding?
It suggests that what it calls referential grounding might be enough for functional understanding. Think about the vector map again. In the AI's high-dimensional space, the vector for king minus the vector for man plus the vector for woman equals the vector for queen.
That's a famous example, right? King man plus woman equals queen.
It's a real mathematical relationship that emerges in the weights of the model. Now, does the AI know what a queen is in a feudal sense? Has it ever met a queen? Of course not. But it understands the structural relationship between those concepts perfectly. It understands the shape of the concept.
So the argument is that if the vector relationship in the math perfectly mirrors the relationship in the real world, then the AI has a functional understanding of reality.
Exactly. If the map is perfect, do you really need to have walked the territory? The author's argument here is that we keep moving the goalposts for AI. We used to say understanding was being able to use the word correctly in a sentence. Now that the AI does that flawlessly, we say, but do you feel it?
But isn't that a valid critique? The AI doesn't have qualia. It doesn't have the subjective first-person experience of redness or pain or love.
It absolutely doesn't know. It doesn't hurt when you insult it. But the text asks a really pointed question, does it need to? If it can solve problems, write poetry, diagnose diseases, and navigate complex, logical arguments as if it understands. At what point does the lack of a physical body become irrelevant to its utility?
It's the old duck test. If it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, maybe we shouldn't get hung up on whether it's actually a robot duck in disguise.
Or, to take it a step further, maybe our own understanding is just a set of incredibly complex vector relationships in our neurons, and we just feel like it's magic because we're the ones inside the system. Maybe our qualia is just the user interface for our own internal vector map.
Okay, you're giving me an existential crisis again. Let's pull back from the edge of that abyss and talk about something much more concrete. Money, jobs, the economy.
The rubber meets the road.
Because this comparison, human versus AI, isn't just a philosophical debate club topic. It's economic. It's affecting creators and knowledge workers right now.
Section 7 of the analysis, the economy of influence. And this is where the paper makes a pretty brutal assessment. It argues that in the modern content economy, humans are becoming overrated.
Ouch. As a human content creator, I take personal offense. Why are we overrated?
Well, look at it from a cold, hard market perspective. Human creators are messy. We burn out. We have public scandals. We demand pay raises. We get sick. We are, from a business standpoint, risk variables.
And we have limited vocabularies and need to sleep 8 hours a night.
Right. Now contrast that with an AI influencer or an AI copywriter. It's stable, it's predictable, it can speak 50 languages instantly and flawlessly, it can be awake 204/7. It provides granular insights to marketers because every single interaction is logged as data. It scales infinitely.
So logically, the market should just replace us all with AI. And we are starting to see the rise of AI slop. That's the term people are using, right?
Yeah. AI slop. The internet is rapidly filling up with this waxy, hyper-optimized content. You've seen it. It's perfectly grammatical. It's SEO optimized down to the last keyword, but it's soulless. It has the uncanny valley of text.
But here's the thing, and maybe this is my human bias. I think people hate that stuff. I know I do. I scroll right past it. I actively look for the typo. I look for the weird, unoptimized take.
And that is the counterpoint the paper makes. The great irony is that our inefficiency becomes our primary selling point. The text argues that humans still hold the edge in imperfection and nuance. We like human-made content because it's flawed. We like the fact that a YouTuber looks tired in their video or stumbles over a word or gets genuinely angry about something. It signals authenticity. It signals that there is skin in the game.
So our inability to be perfect prediction engines is actually our premium asset in the market.
In an economy flooded with synthetic perfection, being a messy biological stochastic machine becomes a luxury good. It's the difference between handcrafted thought and factory-farmed thought.
I can live with that. I'll rebrand myself as an artisanal, handcrafted intelligence. But there is a very hard physical limit looming over the AI side of this equation, right? It's not just about content quality. It's about the power bill.
The energy constraints. This is a huge factor that often gets overlooked. The human brain is an absolute miracle of efficiency. It operates on about 20 watts of power.
20 watts, that's a dim light bulb.
A very dim light bulb. And with that 20 watts, you are running consciousness, love, fear, algebra, and you're keeping your heart beating. The brain uses something called endogenous gain control. It only spends energy when and where it absolutely needs to. It's the ultimate green tech.
And the AI data centers.
The von Neumann architecture, the kind of chips we use today, is hitting a scaling crunch. To get an AI as smart as a human to train these massive models, we are burning enough electricity to power small nations. Data centers are becoming the new steel mills of the 21st century. It's fundamentally unsustainable at its current trajectory.
So biology still wins on miles per gallon.
By an enormous margin for now. The text does mention a move toward analog systems or neuromorphic chips that try to mimic biological physics to lower that energy cost. But currently, the wet prediction engine, which is us, is far, far more eco-friendly than the dry one.
We have covered a massive amount of ground here. We've gone from the core mechanism of the prediction engine to the vocabulary gap to this mind-bending idea of evolutionary pre-training to the geometry of thought. So when we step back and look at this stochastic mirror, what's the synthesis? What are we really seeing in the reflection?
I think the synthesis is that the mirror is real. The analogy holds up. We are both prediction engines. One is biological, refined by millions of years of death and survival. It's pre-trained by evolution to minimize surprise in the physical world.
Right.
The other is silicon, refined by minimizing mathematical loss across the entire written history of humanity in a digital world.
One is wet, efficient, and deeply social. The other is dry, vast, and purely statistical.
Exactly. But the key insight, the thing that really sticks with me from this analysis, is that the insult we started this whole conversation with, it's just guessing, applies to both of us. We are all just trying to predict the next moment to minimize our surprise. We are all just surfing the wave of uncertainty.
It's a deeply humbling thought. It really takes us off our special pedestal. But I want to leave our listener with the final provocation from the source material. It's a bit dark. It mentions the dead internet theory and the coming post-human era.
This is the dark turn at the very end of the paper. The logic goes like this. If AI is just a mirror of the data we feed it, and if AI is currently producing what we call hallucinations and slop and biased outputs, what does that say about the data it was trained on?
It was trained on us. It read our internet.
It read our thoughts, our arguments, our fictions, our conspiracy theories, our biases. If the reflection in the mirror looks distorted and crazy, maybe it's not the glass that's broken. Maybe the subject standing in front of it, humanity, is the one that's incoherent.
So, are we upset about AI, not because it's fake, but because it reveals that our own consciousness is just a series of very good but often flawed guesses?
That is the final uncomfortable question. And as we enter this era where the internet becomes filled with machines, talking to machines, mimicking humans who are themselves mimicking each other, the very definition of real is going to get very, very blurry. We might find that the mirror eventually becomes the world.
Something to think about the next time you predict what I'm going to say.
Oh.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.
See you next time.
I'm Satosha.
And I'm Satoshi.